All right. Again, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
It sounds like your time's pretty short with us, so I guess we can probably just jump straight into things. I'd hope to maybe talk through some of the ideas the Sustainability Commission had previously put to council and just see if there was any information you could provide about red flags, if there was anything we definitely couldn't do, so we know we shouldn't suggest it. And then if you had any information on essentially what investments might result in investments in energy efficiency, what types of gains we might expect if there's any data that you can share on that. In terms of if we were to raise money and spend it on energy efficiency, what the greenhouse gas reductions and cost benefits might be.
Right.
Do you want to start, or should I just go ahead and share my screen with that document with all those different ideas in it, or how would you like to begin?
Oh, well, I just wanted to introduce myself to Mike. I don't think we've ever met. Ethan Nelson, I'm the city's intergovernmental relations manager, and I had been the sustainability manager for a few years. And I know Howard and I know Zach, but I don't know if we've ever formally met. So nice to meet you. And how long have you been on the commission?
I think I'm on my 2-week anniversary.
Nice.
Yeah. No, I've been watching you though, so that at least that gives us something. You get a little airtime here and there on the
Right.
city council meetings, and yeah, appreciate your work, and I would not want to have your job for $1 million.
That would be great for $1 million.
Well, okay, maybe for $1 million. Okay.
I think there's probably some like high-priced lobbyists in DC for the petrochemical industry that that's within their purview. So
that's an annual salary, not a lump sum.
Right. How are you, Howard?
Doing all right.
Yeah.
Yep. 4 more months, and I'm rotating off the commission.
Oh, and then what are you going to do then?
Well, I'm on the RAPA board.
Okay.
And then I'm still on the Envision Eugene Technical Advisory Committee.
So you'll continue to find some way to poke and prod, huh?
A little bit, yeah.
Good. That's good. Okay, yeah. Well, thanks, Zach. If you want to share your screen, we can walk through these, and I'll share with you my kind of, well, wait, before you share your screen, well, kind of looking at everybody right now, I just want to preface this by saying that by no way is the city's authority absolute, obviously, right? Yet there will always be challengers to the city's authority, whether they come from the state, the federal, or the private or local sectors. And so that's one of the things that and until a lot of times it's either clearly articulated in state statute or federal code, or it has been decided upon within the judicial system through a court case, and there's precedence, then a lot of times we will affirmatively take the position that the city's authority is the kind of tantamount, and then just with the recognition that others might disagree. And so that, I think in a sense, that is some of what we're going to get in today as we walk through these, is that I'm not going to be able to give you a yes, no. I can say, well, we believe that we have the authority, but we've never had to test it. And what would testing it look like? So I just want to kind of give you that caveat.
Thanks for that, Ethan. I'll go ahead and share my screen here, and we'll get started. Okay, so this is that document that you shared out, Ethan. Do you want to just start at the beginning and we'll go through it?
Sure. So limit or prohibit new natural gas infrastructure. And so, as you can see in the footnotes, PUC notice, permissible franchise term are limited to regulation, and then the impacts on the bottom line. And so it's, who had said is, we're not necessarily sure. Like, if we would prohibit new natural gas infrastructure, like, what would it look like? And this has been, you've heard this discussion. I think there's like the legal authority, and then there's all the politics associated with it. Well, we would believe that we have the ability to limit infrastructure in our city based upon home rule authority. Does that mean that we're going to use it? Does that mean that PUC agrees? Does it mean that there's allowance for that? No. I mean, so I think that's like the biggest one is that we likely differ in our interpretation of state statute and law as to then what the PUC might see as their role, and then also what Northwest Natural, in this case, natural gas infrastructure, Northwest Natural would say. Northwest Natural is obviously going to say, no, you don't have the authority. We don't believe you do. We're going to fight it. We're going to take legal action, oppose it, whatever. PUC, PUCs, they're not gonna, they have not opined on whether or not they have the authority or that they would give it, and so we would, if we took action, then there could be, PUC could step in on their own, or the utility could appeal an action to the PUC, and the PUC could then step on in and claim authority. And then, so once again, then it gets on into a legal matter with the Department of Justice having a attorney assigned to the PUC, and then Northwest Natural's internal and also contract lawyers. So, questions on that, on number one, before we move forward?
As far as a PUC opinion, is there a formal way to get that? Because it seems to me like that would be mighty valuable in our direction.
Mike, good question. There's a summary judgment, a summary statement. We could request one of those. And we've talked about those with the PUC, and they've been real squirrely. They're like, nah. And so the experience that we've had in our engagement with the PUC is that if it's not 100% clear, then they've been pretty hands-off to say, we're not going to give you an answer to that specific question until it's become more formal through a process. Like you come to us and you submit through our normal process, or somebody appeals. So I think that's where PUC is right now. And honestly, and then back to your question, like, council has not directed us to go to PUC and start a formal proceeding to understand what our legal authorities are for a limit on natural gas infrastructure. Council has not, they've had one discussion on this topic, and it was for this work session, and it covered a lot of territory. They've had a lot of input from lots of different perspectives, but they haven't spent a whole lot of time, and then they haven't given us direction. So.
On mechanism, I guess, have you guys thought about that at all? And then that would be my last on this.
On the mechanism?
Yeah, of like how it would actually be implemented if we were to try and do it.
Well, I mean, I think that, there's kind of, do you do it through the infrastructure provision of the right-of-way agreement, right? I mean, that's infrastructure going on into our streets and the areas we control. Or is it infrastructure that is related to, and it could be kind of, infrastructure / equipment that's going on into buildings. And I think that's kind of the breakdown that's happened in other communities, is that they'll take a look at what authorities they have in either their oversight of the right of way, or is it within building codes and potentially land use codes. So we haven't spent, like, that's a fairly large, complicated kind of piece of work, and we have not been directed to do that work.
Thanks. I guess try and get through a couple more of these before you have to hop off.
Sure.
Some of these are probably going to be sort of duplicative to what you just stated, in that some would happen through the building codes and some would happen through the potentially through other processes, correct? In terms
Yeah,
of,
can you go back on up to take a look at number 2 real quick?
yeah, that's the smart energy program.
Yeah, and I would say, like, I don't think that we would. I mean, maybe in a franchise, but once again, that's a collective agreement, right? It's not like they have to agree to these terms. And so we could put a term in that says, Northwest Natural, we want you to require that all of your customers are buying offsets. And if they said okay to it, then that'd be fine. But, so that's the thing. It's like, well, I don't think that we have direct authority to say all gas customers must offset their use. I mean, they could. I mean, that could be something that council wants to put forward, but would that need to go to voters for approval? I don't know. So that one's like a little bit more challenging. Let's take another look at the other 3 in the next page. Regulate the purchase and installation of natural gas fueled appliances. Prohibit financial incentives. Prohibit financial incentives for purchasing natural gas appliances. Prohibit installation of natural gas. So regulate the purchase and installation. I would say on these ones that are like regulate the purchase, or prohibit financial incentives, or prohibit financial for natural gas appliances or installing service. I don't think that we've got the authority. I think that if we started getting into those, then PUC might get real involved, and Northwest Natural would definitely push. I think that where we would say is what probably is more within our reasonable authorities to look into would be this installation of natural gas appliances. And that's really the building code piece. And so, is there it's not through the state building code, because the state's not going to probably put that into their building code. But if there's a local code amendment that was to get at, say, for new construction, the city wants to adopt a policy that says new construction can't have over X amount of GHGs per year. And then to comply with that, we are putting forth a model building code related to heating and cooling or fuel efficiency or something like that, right? I think that's the pathway that other communities have taken related to setting that goal. Prohibit installation of natural gas service. So that's kind of the same thing. Require Northwest Natural to switch to biogas and renewable hydrogen. Well, they're already doing it. Senate Bill 98 gave them that, and it's just more about the challenge with the renewables discussion. So the renewables discussion related to renewable natural gas is that there's people want to replace all of their gas with renewables, and there's just not enough. Yeah, I mean, the ODO report that said, there's 22% of the state's natural gas usage could be met by renewable natural gas, doesn't take into account the fact that that's like a technical potential, not the actual financial potential. And when you start looking into available technologies and then addressing, for competition of feedstock and then financial feasibility of the feedstock, it just doesn't, it doesn't pan out. It would move from 22% to below 5%. And an example is there's like, a large portion of the biogas that's being cited in there is coming from gasification of woody biomass. Well, there's no plants in the US on that right now. So is it technically feasible? Yeah. Could it become more feasible in the future? Sure. But it's like, what's the cost? When you start to add in the cost aspect of it, you start to see the feasibility go down. Food waste. I mean, in that feasibility, they included a thread for what food waste was. Well, I used to run our food waste programs here in the city, and I know for damn sure. And I used to be a project manager on a different project, but with the designers and developers for the biomethane project out in Junction City. Those things are not. They're pretty sensitive, and they did not like taking municipal food waste because there's so much contamination in it. And so, from just like a pragmatic, systematic standpoint, getting food waste on into a compost stream versus going into a biodigester is more than likely what the reality is out there. Well, okay, so we can, argue the merits of that, but experience has shown us that that's what happens. And so all of a sudden, then your numbers related to like what your food waste, what you're going to get from a renewable natural gas on food waste is a lot lower, right? So I think that it's that we just have to recognize that renewables within the natural gas system is something that the utility is already working on, that the PUC has got control over, and it's a costly endeavor. So do we want to require it? Do we want to push for it? I don't know what the benefit would be there, right? And then the other piece is dedicate, number 8, increase franchise fees and dedicate franchise fee funds to implementing a program that provides incentives to switch from natural gas to renewables. Yeah, we could do that, sure. I don't know if it's going to really like make a big impact.
I have a couple questions. On the renewable gas piece, the eWeb city manager, Frank Lawson, has been talking about the potential for renewable hydrogen and using renewable hydrogen to create synthetic methane, using renewables, ostensibly at night in the future. Is synthetic gas something that has been on your radar, and is that something to take seriously or consider?
Well, sure, but is it the city of Eugene's role? No, it's not our role. I mean, what you're talking about is something that the U.S. Department of Energy should be making major investments in from an R&D standpoint. I mean, it's kind of like nuclear power. Does the city want to try to work on nuclear? No, that's not our purview, right? I mean, could we? Not that I'd like nuclear power, but I mean, it's similarly very cost and regulatory intensive. So it's also like, what scope are you working at? The City Council of Eugene, Oregon, trying to make a difference in hydrogen. I don't know. Yeah, we can maybe support it, but really kind of fundamentally, is it going to be a game changer? I think that down the line, once again, yes, hydrogen can be. It's not a panacea. It's another piece in the puzzle. And the challenges with hydrogen is that you have to create the hydrogen. Well, how are you creating the hydrogen? You're using power. Okay, well, Frank and others have talked about it using excess low-cost power during periods when you've got high wind or high water events, and you've got a lot of power that you got to push off the grid. Okay, well, you can store it in batteries, or in this case, you create hydrogen molecules and you're able to store it and put it on into the gas system. Hey, that's great. I think that's technically feasible. It's definitely on the horizon. There's also a challenge, though. There's certain levels. I mean, this I talked to our technical consultant on it related to, like, they're trying this out in Europe, and most of the equipment is not, that is in houses and in industry and everything is not designed to use. It's designed for CH4. It's not designed for hydrogen, and so it's going to have some technical issues related to if you just dump in it's kind of like when you run a car on biodiesel, R99 or B99 versus B20. There's a difference in the equipment that gets impacted, and you have to account for that. And so I don't think it's this panacea where you just plug and play, right? You got to, like, understand all of the other elements and then walk through what the costs of those are. So if you say, well, if there's only 10%, and this is just a number, 10% of renewable hydrogen go into the grid or into the pipeline system, okay, 10% is better than no percent, but that's not 90%, that's not 100%, that's not 80, that's not 70. You still got these other amounts, and how much time and effort and money you're going to put in to get that 10%. So those are just questions, you got to kind of work through.
In terms of process, if the city wanted to try and put a stronger requirement to have a renewable gas standard, would that go through the PUC or, and then on number 8, I guess that second question that I had for you, which is around what is the potential greenhouse gas reduction impact of if we spend fee money on energy efficiency?
Yeah, so Zach, I mean, in regards to requiring Northwest Natural to provide more renewable natural gas to Eugene. So if that's the question, I would say, how do you do it? Well, you can do it through a cooperative agreement, which the franchise is, which I think Northwest Natural will be open to, but there's a cost to that. Like it's not, the cost of renewable natural gas is not on parity with the cost of fossil gas, right? And so if you're going to do that, then you got to buy that. You got to buy that RNG, and then you have to. It's almost like it's a wreck. You're buying the RNG, or you're buying the environmental attribute of the fuel, and then you're retiring that. Certainly, we could do that. It's just going to cost money. And if you're asking, like, regulatorily, we say thou shalt have. I mean, it's the whole 100% renewables. Thou shalt have 100% renewables. I think if there's, if it's borne on the backs of just the industry and the utilities, they're going to say, no, we're not going to cover the cost of that. And they're going to push back on it. And if it says, well, we can be rate based. Okay, well, that's what they've done. They've put it on into rates, and they're on a pretty aggressive schedule to put in something like 20% of RNG over the course of by 2050. That's a lot. I mean, that's more than what is probably feasible, and you see that their projects that they're getting engaged in aren't always in Eugene. I mean, in Oregon, they're buying stuff. They're trying to buy access on into projects nationally, right? So and so back to this hydrogen, like, where are we going to spend a bunch of time, and where's the city council and the city of Eugene going to have purchase? I don't think spending a whole bunch of time on renewables, or excuse me, on hydrogen, other than some big policy statement that we say we support it, is going to be really impactful, because it's costly. Goes back to that part that I talked about with where the industry is, and that's like the Teslas, the Elon Musks, the major investment firms and folks doing it. It's not the city of Eugene's. Like, we can't play in that kind of technology landscape.
I just want to do a check on time. Are you out of here right at 2:30, Ethan?
No, I got a couple more minutes. I can be a little bit late to this other thing. So then to the question that you had related to, like, where do investments get us on energy efficiency, right? Well, so we did some work, and let me see if I can pull it on up, and I might be able to share some of it with you. I just want to take a look. I'm sorry, I'm just taking a look at something so I get you the right numbers. Apologize for the delay.
Hey, Zach, while he's doing that, can you go back to the second page really quick? Just really quick. Right. That's the one. Got it. That's all I need.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm not pulling up the information that I was hoping for. Oh, wait, there it is. Oh, okay. There you go. If you want, I'll share my screen. So this is just, I asked ETO to provide, give me some information. And so this is based upon from their 2011 to 2017 data. And they said, you know, these are the sites, but this is the, in here, this is the amount of money that's been associated. So what I did was, how much money have you invested into the community in energy efficiency? Because ETO's, you know, Energy Trust of Oregon, is everybody familiar with Energy Trust of Oregon? So I'll give the primer on it. Energy Trust of Oregon was created by the legislature when they created the public purpose charge back around like 1999, 2000. And basically on an investor-owned utilities bill, there's a like percentage, the public purpose charge, the PPC, that is charged to investor-owned utilities. And that's PGE, PacifiCorp, but not EWEB, obviously. Well, there's also been a rate mechanism through a tariff process where the natural gas utilities also pay on into a PPC, and then they give that money to Energy Trust of Oregon. And so ostensibly, Energy Trust of Oregon is the energy efficiency organization for investor-owned utilities in Oregon. And so they do all of the programs, and they're very cost-effective, efficient, and they have to report on out to the legislature on an annual basis, and they've just got a lot of oversight. Great organization, right? And so down here in Eugene, any investment in energy efficiency on natural gas side is done by ETO. So I asked them, what's your numbers for the past, like, you know, a 10-year period, or give me some numbers of what you've been looking at. And so here's the amounts that they've been investing over the course of time in both, and it's called RCI. So there's residential, commercial, and industrial. R residential, commercial, CI industrial. And so you can see where like they'll spend, some years it's commercial, some years they'll spend a bunch on industrial. And what they do is they go out and they cherry pick, because if you think about it, they have to go out and they got to acquire as much conservation savings as they can per year, but they want to do it on the most efficient way possible. And that includes how many touch points, like how many interactions that they have, right? How many sales or whatever, right? And so transactions, sorry. And so they're trying to minimize transactions. If they can come in and they can work with a large commercial entity or industrial entity to invest in some of their cost savings measures and efficiency measures, they're going to do that rather than set up a program that goes on out and does windows and in homes everywhere, right? Because it's just like you're doing tons and tons of transactions that increases the cost and everything else, right? So that's how they've been kind of approaching their work here. So, but you can kind of tell, like, okay, here's the amounts of money that they've done, that they've approached. Well, and then down here, this is like the therms, and then these are then the there's a emission scoping factor here for scope 1 for the combustion. And so then you get in the GHG intensity of what has been then saved, right? And so we did that, and then we got on into this, total cost for energy efficiency measures and a cost per ton per savings, and kind of came up with some figures there. And so out of that, we basically came up with, to say forecast going forward based upon ETO's numbers, what would $100,000 investment get us? What would X amount of dollars investment get us? So we came up with that, and then we started applying it to, as we were doing the negotiations, what numbers were we looking at? And so this has all been in the public discussion. And when we say, Alan Zelenka says, "Oh, we're talking about $1.5 million," and we're like, "Well, no, it's really like within the carbon reduction agreement. It's if it was 3%, or it would be $750,000 at the tops." And so we're kind of, it was back of the envelope math on some of this stuff. Well, when you take a look at $750,000, we were estimating that we would probably see a reduction of around 18,000 tons a year of CO2 for the different emissions programs that we do. So it was pretty costly, but that's kind of where we were seeing. No, it wasn't even 18,000. It was like over the course of 10 years, 18,000 tons would be reduced. Every year is like 1,800 tons of CO2 would be gained through efficiency measures. So it's not, does it match what the projected growth is? No. So there's a disconnect between and I want to say this just because I know that this is intriguing to you. But the thing is that energy efficiency is one of the best investments that we could be making, other than just having people conserve and turn off their power, right? Which is not something that's really feasible. And so when you think about it, oh my gosh, even when we do energy efficiency, there's so little reduction in GHGs just from efficiency, it just becomes a really hard nut to crack. Everything else gets really costly after that.
Can I ask a question about those numbers? Did you calculate cost savings from not using the gas as part of those cost per ton figures?
Well, what do you mean?
Oh, so I guess if the city is spending the money and we get X tons of emissions, then from the city's perspective, that's how much it costs per ton. Is 750,000 over 10 years would be $7.5 million, and you'd save 18,000 tons.
Yeah. So in this, so here's another way to look at it. So we looked and we said, okay, and this is using some numbers from Homes for Good and their programs, and they said, okay, well, weatherization and weatherized home reduces 18 million BTUs per year. Okay, well, so you spend $7,800 to do efficiency measures and weatherization and everything, and the assumed life is 20 years. You're getting 1 metric ton of CO2 emissions reductions, right? And so then over the course of 20 years, you got 20 or just under 20. Well, if you did $100,000 in investment in 12 homes, you got 12 metric tons, 233, right? So it's these numbers, they're not it's important work, right? And that's where you want to do it. You want to have an efficiency, and you want to highlight low income properties, right? But it's not a panacea. You look at what EWEB's done over the course of time to reduce electricity, and they still, we still got a heavy load. Homes still, the way that they're constructed. You have a house that's built with, literally, there's a ton of housing stock out there and commercial stock. You see them around town, the woody walk-ups, the 2-story woody walk-ups, 2x4 commercial buildings that are just running. They were built during a time when BPA was saying, power's so plentiful and cheap, we shouldn't even be metering it. So that's the house that, or the building that you are now trying to gain more efficiency on. Well, you can replace the windows, that's fine. You know, you can maybe get a more efficient HVAC system, that's fine. But you still got a piece of shit building that you're trying to keep warm, that's got 2x4 studs that, you know, and maybe somebody did a good job installing the insulation 30 years ago. You know, and then you're going to go spend 10K to like no, I mean 10K, you know, think about trying to like put external insulation and new cladding and all the other stuff that's required, and then link on in with your windows if you wanted to add a 2-inch insulation onto these places. I mean, it's cost prohibitive, and you're still going to have energy need. So, I mean, I hate to be a downer. So we try to work on the building code side, and that's work that I'm doing right now. And we're trying to get the REACH code bill passed and be able to have a higher, more efficient building as the norm. And it's not anything that's outside of being what's built right now by you know, green builders. You know, it's using advanced framing, using 2x6 studs, filling those cavities with as much insulation as possible. And that's good for cold and hot days. So anyway, I hope that I was of benefit to you.
I appreciate the information. Are you able to, so I guess I have two. One, are you able to share those documents with us? And then,
Oh, not yet, because I'm not, I need to give them to council at some point, and it's like trying to figure out when and how we do that, which we're assuming will come in the future. So
okay. And then on the building codes piece, then it sounds like we are currently trying to get the authority to be able to do a local, stronger building code and we're not currently allowed to do a stronger building code, or we have to go through some process to get a stronger building code locally.
yeah, so there's the REACH code. So the bill I'm talking about is House Bill 2398. It's the REACH code bill. And basically the REACH code was developed 10 years ago as a high performance code that would be kind of 3 years in front of a regular updated energy code cycle. Well, it never came to fruition because nobody ever used the REACH code to build with it because it wasn't tied to utility incentives. And so no builders would ever use it. And there's maybe like 3 or 4 projects statewide that happened over the course of that 10 years. And so there's been a group of cities and building energy efficiency advocates like Energy Trust of, or not at ETO, but others that I've been working with. We've been saying, okay, hey, we need to get the REACH code updated because it hasn't been updated in a while, to get it 10% above what the base code is right now. And that's also part of the governor's executive order, right? But for whatever reason, the building codes division drags their feet on this stuff. And so we're saying, hey, we need the REACH code updated to be 10% more efficient than the base code. And we want it to be locally adopted. We want it to be adoptable at the local level, rather than having to go through an amendment, a local code amendment process. And so the city council could just, and so that gives us really clear authority, and we don't have to then work through going back to the DCD director and all this other stuff that's built on into the process that just makes it really difficult for jurisdictions to adopt changes to the state building code. So we're trying to get a glide path, and committee hearings, we've got another public hearing back on Wednesday this week. Needless to say, House, HBA, NECA, and Northwest Natural have been opposition to the bill. So, and this comes down to Zach, my comments and my difficult conversations. Many of us internally are having lots of difficult conversations externally on a daily basis. And so we just want that to be recognized, that we're doing our best to move a lot of these things forward. Just have that recognition. So Spend my
Thank you for
weekends
the time
talking.
with us today. I think Mike had a question. But
Yeah,
thank you so
just real quick, and I know you got to go, Ethan, but if this is a lot and this is a little, how close are we to getting a temporary agreement with Northwest Natural?
Like, what do you mean a temporary agreement?
So this is a lot and
Yeah,
this
I
is
got
a
the lot
little.
and little, right? But what's the
Okay.
temporary? I don't
Right.
understand.
So I'm assuming we're still negotiating, and I'm assuming that there's an ongoing dialogue, right?
Formally negotiations have not, the city council has not said, do not negotiate with Northwest Natural anymore.
Okay.
So are we at the table on the timeline that we had been? No. But we're
Right.
still open to, that stuff, but.
So do you, I mean, I guess that's kind of an esoteric question. I'm assuming that I'm just a watcher looking in, that those talks are continuing, and that there's still a relative possibility that we're going to have a temporary franchise agreement, right?
Oh, I don't. The last council meeting, council did not give us any direction to agree to terms that were not beneficial to the city and the community.
Okay.
And so with that in mind, we're still in negotiation with the understanding that Northwest Natural has to come back with conditions that would meet that direction from council, and heretofore they have not.
Okay. All right. So that's where that is, and sort of coming back to council then.
Yeah, I mean, so the timeline to adopt or to post an ordinance for adoption, so that then there would be no lapse in the franchise agreement, the right-of-way franchise agreement, that date is passed. And so
Yeah, I understand that, but I didn't think, and you just confirmed that meant stop. You're still continuing on that negotiation path, right?
yeah, I mean, yeah, like if the utility called me or Sarah Maderi and they said, hey, we want to talk, we'd be like, all right, what are we going to talk about? We've done a lot of talking. We've done 2 years of talking.
All right. Well, we're still rooting for you out here, at least.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And I know it's hard, so that's all I'll say. Bless you.
Thanks.
essentially, until you get direction to do something different by council, it's essentially, we're sort of in a holding pattern of, this is what the city stance is, and if Northwest Natural doesn't move towards it, then we are where we are.
Yeah, and I would say that I totally agree that that's a good way to say it. I would just also just add that when you say this is what the city stands, that this is still, is malleable, right? I mean, it's not, we're not set in stone, but we know we're not going to agree to what they've put on the table, which is loss of kind of our local control, and then, we haven't even, so I mean, the thing that's interesting is that those discussions at the council table have been mostly around legal authority, not even getting on into the details of what the agreement would accomplish from a carbon and a financial standpoint. And so we were trying to stage that to say, okay, first and foremost is this pretty big legal authority issue that we got to get through. And if we can get through that, then let's talk about all of this other stuff, because it's kind of like it's a triage, right? Your prioritization, like if you got a cut on your hand versus you got, a shot across your chest, you're going to deal with the shot across your chest. And once that's stabilized, then you'll come to the hand. Well, it's the same thing. Like the legal authority issues are way more fundamental and have much broader impact across what the city does, not just in this one instance, but basically the management of our right-of-way and or the public's right-of-way, right? And Northwest Natural is but one of a series of bad corporate actors that like to trot onto local governments' authorities for the benefit of their shareholders. simply put. So we've got a bigger picture in mind related to like what we want to concede to on a legal front, even before we get on into having a discussion about, well, what's the actual impacts of these policies or these investments or these agreement pieces. So, all right.
Mike, Howard, or anything else for the good of the order? Ethan, sounds like you got to get off.
Yep.
Well,
I really appreciate you coming and talking to us.
Ethan, thanks for being
Yeah, Ethan was,
in conversation. Much appreciated.
Yeah, and I would just say, I mean,
yeah, nice to meet you, Ethan.
it was good to meet you, Mike. Good to see you, Howard and Zach. And I just think that if the commission's going to be putting something forward as far as a recommendation, the more that, and I recognize you're independent, body advisory to council, the more that we can work together to ensure that it's something that staff who's been doing a lot of this work sees as a effective effective use of time, because we're limited on time, and we want to make sure that, and people and bodies, right? That's just where we are, and we want to make sure that it's actually advancing the conversation in a meaningful way, than one where we're going to be spinning our wheels on stuff that might be, not part of like what a good central impactful conversation is. So, anyway, all right. Thanks for the time. Take care.
We'll be in touch. Okay. Any comments or conversation? I might have one other thing to bring in before we get off the call for the day.
No, but thanks for setting that up. That was super helpful for me. I don't know if it was for you, but yeah, that I really appreciate sitting and hearing that.
Okay, I guess I have one more thing to talk about, which was essentially sort of what is the goal for natural gas? Like if we were to go through this document and look at the potential scale of the solutions and try and think of, okay, well, which of these working together could get us towards our goal? What is that goal that we're trying to reach? And so I actually just wanted to pull up a document from the city's climate action plan, because I think, let's see. Can you guys see that? So this is from the city's climate action plan, and this is essentially the forecast of emission reductions into the future. And there's 3 pages. So there's the transportation page, and largely for transportation, this bottom line is the goal we're trying to reach, and the next line in is where we think that all of our actions, if we fulfill them, will get us. So for the transportation sector, this second line is pretty much next to this line, because if we do everything and it works, then we'll essentially get to our overarching goal as applied to the transportation sector. In the buildings and energy sector, if you apply our goal, it would be down here, but our expected actions actually only add up to this small difference here. And so that we'd have to do a lot more if we wanted to reach our greenhouse gas reduction target, if we were to apply our overarching targets to the natural gas sector. And so essentially it calls for a reduction of 254,000 tons. It looks like we are already supposed to get from these actions approximately 75,000 tons. And so so that's the difference between here and here, is that 75,000. And if we wanted to reach all the rest of the way to our goal, we would have another 179,000 tons of emission reductions potentially from the gas sector. Yeah. So in terms of like, what is our target? It would essentially probably be this 179,000 number. one issue that I've come across is that the emission reductions that we are saying are already going to happen, some of them are from offsets, which I don't know if we actually want to count that as moving us towards our goal. So that means that we might actually have an additional 17,000 tons above that 179,000 ton number that we still have to get. And then on this one, the Metropolitan Waste Treatment Plant, I think we're currently selling the renewable energy credits that we generate from that plant. They're largely going to the California market. And so I just want to make sure that we're actually, if we're reducing that, it would seem that we would actually have to keep those renewable energy credits and retire them and not sell them to California if we're wanting to take credit for the emission reductions associated with it. So potentially this 179,000 ton number would be 17,000 plus 7,000 higher. So more around 200,000 tons. So when we start looking through the scale of those options and thinking through what would even bring us close, I think those are the numbers that we would potentially be looking at. And any thoughts or questions or comments on that?
Well, just based on what Ethan said, it looks like it's going to be pretty hard to get there, at least with the natural gas component, if we have a business as usual scenario.
Yeah, I knew the GHG reduction numbers from efficiency were going to be low. I did not think they were going to be that low. I was hoping for like at least an order of magnitude larger than that.
Yeah, that was really surprising to me too. I guess expectations were that would see a bigger cost benefit there, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case.
Zach, can you send me a link to this document that we're looking at?
Yeah, sure. And it's on if you just type in Eugene Climate Action Plan.
Oh, that's where that is. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Eugene Climate Action Plan, and go to
never mind. I got it.
The document with full appendices, and you can see the whole thing. So it works for you guys. I will put this into like a draft document that sort of says, this is the goal, and then we can start kind of sifting through the information in that spreadsheet that Ethan shared with us, and hopefully there is a pathway to get to accomplishing this for the natural gas sector, that we can say that this is something to consider. Largely saying let's go for the things that are going to be able to scale towards what we need, if that's what makes sense.
Zach, are we still being recorded?
We are.
Okay.
We're coming up on the end of the meeting. I was hoping, are you guys available? I was hoping maybe 2 weeks from today and 3 weeks from today at the same time that we could plan, and I'm hoping we can actually try and put something together if we are able to get our research done and kind of get in alignment before then.
I'm sure those times are fine, but if you guys could, the last time I looked everywhere, get a
yeah, it seems like there was a mess up
and that'd be great if I could.
I think there was a glitch or something this time around, Mike, that nobody got it. So okay. I think that'll be fixed in the future.
That's fine. That's fine. And those just send those invites out. If I have any conflicts, I'll let you know, but I think I'm pretty good.
Monday afternoons are good for me, Zach, generally.
Great. I will let Samantha know to schedule us for 2 weeks and 3 weeks from today, and we'll see how far we get along with this project by then.
Hey, Zach, I have a conflict on the 29th in the afternoon.
How about the 30th then?
Yeah, I can do the 30th.
Does that work for you, Mike?
I'm checking. Same time?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can make that.
Great. So we'll do it on Monday, the 22nd and Tuesday, the 30th at 2 p.m. All right. Well, thanks very much. I hope that conversation was as helpful to you as it was to me.
Yeah, I really appreciated hearing that. That was good. Good stuff.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, you guys. Have a great week, and I will see you again soon.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.